Jeff, first off, from your perspective, how do you view the state of the team right now?
Uh, I don't like the state of the team right now. We're not playing well. I think it's been a little while that we haven't been playing well. Um, um, I would imagine our fans are frustrated by the way they're playing and what we're playing, and I'm frustrated with them. Um, so, I remain optimistic about the rest of the season, and I think that, it's on us to turn this thing around. But there's still over a third of the season left, and we're right in the thick of the race, and we got to get it done.
Why do you think the team isn't where it wants to be?
Well, we can attack it a lot of different ways, but honestly, for me, I always see the world through a defensive lens, and I just think our defense has to get better. When we're at our best, our defense not only creates stops and puts pressure on the other team to kind of take a while to crawl back into games, but also it generates a lot of offense for us. And I don't think it's a coincidence that earlier in the season, when we were healthy, we were the 10th best offensive net rating team and the third best defensive net rating team. Our defense rises our offense, elevates it. So for me, I think that end of the floor has to get better. And I know that the group's been spending a lot of time on that recently, and it's got to show up.
For fans looking at this deadline as maybe a lack of urgency or a complacency, lack of aggressiveness, what's your message to the fan base about not making a move?
Yeah, that's just not ever the way that we approach it. We're aggressive 365 days a year, and I think we're not afraid to make bold moves, as I think last summer showed. But the answer to frustration isn't just to make a move just for the sake of making a move. And I think one thing to understand is the way that our team is set up right now, with contracts and timing. For us to make a significant move means that we have to break into the core, our core guys. We're the fourth youngest team in the league still, for all the expectations that were placed on us and the hopes that we had this coming into the season. We're the fourth youngest team in the league, and for us to make a real move that's going to move the needle, it's going to mean breaking up our core. That core has been excellent when it's been on the floor together, So November through mid-December, we were 14-6, and as I said earlier, we had the 10th best net rating offensively, the third best defensive, and I want to say fourth or fifth best net rating overall. And maybe most importantly, our starting lineup of Suggs, Bain, Wagner, Boncaro, and Carter has still, for five-man units that have played over 250 possessions, the third best net rating of any five-man group in the NBA. And that's what predicts playoff success, our best five against your best five. And so, and I don't even think we were playing that great then. But honestly, it was exciting to see us not play great and be 14-6 through that stretch, and kind of post some of these numbers and think okay, we're going to get better and better. Dez is still getting introduced to the lineup, and so forth and so on. So look, for us to break up that core, it's going to have to be a significant move. And I will tell you that we had some substantive talks that I thought could have gone somewhere. Obviously, they did not. They didn't materialize. But it wasn't for a lack of pushing. It wasn't for a lack of urgency. Our mission is to improve this team, and we're never taking a day off from that. It's just that we're not going to do something just for the sake of doing it.
This time, the deadline last year, there was kind of the same situation, almost exactly the same record, in fact, where injuries were just such a huge factor, and you didn't get a chance to see your team. Obviously Jalen didn't come back at all last year. Franz is still working his way back. How much do you balance waiting on these players to get healthy versus saying we've got to do something, or we got to start kind of picking maybe apart at that to move this team forward and achieve this?
Yeah, no. I mean, that is a great question, because that's the convergence that's going to come at us. And so, is it now? Is it this summer? Is it next year? The tricky part is when the group's been whole, it's been really good. It's kind of been what we kind of hoped for. So now the trick is, can you get it whole? Can you keep it whole? Can you get a long enough look to see what's what, and then understand like how best to go from there when you do make a real move. And with that, the confluence of contracts and all of that. That's what drives a lot of moves. When you see guys getting moved for lesser players or into room, it's not because the team doesn't like those players. It's because they can't afford to keep it together. And that's also coming at us. So that's a great question, Philip, and that's something that you have to weigh every year. And so with that, we were looking at some things. They just didn't materialize. And then when they don't materialize, you have to kind of take that to your, use that as an advantage, and see now that you can keep this core together and see what you can do. Because as I said, the signs have been very promising when they've been together.
How concerning is it that they can't? Sorry, how concerning is it that the core for the second season in a row can't stay together on the court?
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning, and it's not just like, look, every team has injuries, but it's having these prolonged injuries. All I can say is like these are soft tissue injuries. There's nothing, what can you say? It's the NBA, and this is what happens sometimes. And I do feel like we're a little bit Groundhog Day this season. The only thing is, I also think we're better this year because of we added Desmond Bain, and so I hate to keep saying it, but when this team has been healthy, it's been really good. And there does come a point where it's like, how long can you wait for that? Are we there yet? I also, then you have to add into the mix, like this is the fourth youngest team in the league. All these guys we're talking about are pre-prime, basically, and so it's a lot of layers to it. It's not just an easy 10-second answer. Why weren't they more aggressive? There's a lot that goes into that. We're ready to be aggressive. I think we showed that this summer. We're not afraid to be aggressive, but what we don't want to do is be rash and just react to the fact that the team's not playing well.
Is this current core and the construction of the roster, is it good enough to compete?
I'd like to find out, and I mean, we came in with high hopes, and I think, as I said, like when it was whole, I think it was showing signs that, hey, if we can continue to grow and build, like by the time you get to the end of the season, I mean, that's what makes the NBA so great, right? Like, you don't know until you get there. But I think all the indicators were pretty positive, and we felt good about it. And I know the character of our guys and the talent and hopefully the way the team fits together. But now we have to reconstitute that because the frustrating part is through whatever we've been through, we've kind of lost that. And now it's not like you get Franz back and you just click. We have to re-earn that. And I know that the team has been spending a lot of time on that. There have been a lot of conversations and practices and starting to get back to basics and a lot of these things. And hopefully we start with a 4-game homestand and as I was saying before, we have, I think, us in Atlanta have the most home games remaining in the Eastern Conference, and we have to take advantage of that.
When the identity of the team has kind of just gone away, like this team doesn't play like they used to play, whether it's effort or success or whatever. Is that coaching? Is that performance? How do you evaluate that?
It's everything. It's everything. It starts with me and it ends with me, and I'm not happy with it. I understand the fans' frustration. We've got to do better. Everybody has to do better. Coaches, players, my staff, everybody. And we've got to like recapture the way that we were playing earlier in the season. And as I said, I don't even think we were playing that great then, but even with that, we posted some really encouraging numbers. And you kind of feel like, oh man, like let this thing flywheel, let this thing grow. But obviously injuries have had a significant say in the course of this season. Once again, I hate to say that, but you have to acknowledge that fact. And especially when two of our best defenders miss a prolonged period at the same time, that's a big obstacle, And so, look, I'm hoping that once we get our guys back, get this group together again, I can tell you that there's belief on this team, there's care factor, there's talent, and we just gotta get it pointed back in the right direction.
When back to full strength is Jamal Mosley. They gotta get this guy to the next level, get this team to the next level.
Yes, I mean Jamal was hired to get us to the next level, and it's his job to get us to the next level, and we believe that he will. but it's him and it's me and it's everybody. It's an organizational success or an organizational failure. It's not on one guy. We've all got to do better, you know. So yeah.
So you recommend Jamal through the rest of the season?
Yes, organizationally, I'm saying we have Jamal. Jamal has our full support, and Jamal's our coach for the rest of the season. So it's not a matter of I know there's a lot of chatter out there and stuff. It's not one person. This is a basketball team. It's a basketball organization, and it's a group effort. We've got to get better, and you know, I can tell you one thing. I know, you know, Moses going home every night, looking at himself in the mirror and not sleeping and trying to figure out how to do this thing and how to, you know, get us back on track. And I know the players are doing the same thing. There's a lot of people that are frustrated and that care greatly about this. And, you know, we feel the weight of the fans' frustration. You know, let me say that, you know. When I hear lack of urgency or this and that, it's like I don't sleep, you know. I mean, we got to get this thing right, and you know, I'm confident that we will.
Where is Franz in his recovery, and how do you think that situation, playing in Europe and then coming back and not playing, was handled?
Playing in
Playing,
Denver?
like,
Listen.
games and then playing in
I'll say
Europe
this.
and-
I'll say this. When you get to the back end of rehabilitation periods, it's the trickiest part, right? Then it becomes more like, how am I feeling? You know, and you kind of you play 3-on-3, and you know, teams don't really practice anymore. So you know, you don't really know until you take that leap. I will say this: I don't think wild horses could have kept Franz Wagner from playing in Berlin, and I think Franz felt he was ready to play, and you know, did okay. And I think he was probably had adrenaline coming out of his ears. And the next game in England, less so. And he probably realized, oh, wait a sec, maybe I wasn't all the way there. You know, a lot of this has to do with, you know, as they say, reconditioning and all of that. So I think, you know, Franz is as competitive, as tough, and loves basketball as much as anyone I've ever been around. And you guys know, what did he play his first couple of years, like 81 and 80 games or something like that? You know, Franz wants to be right. Franz wants to help this team win games. And you know, I think to answer your first part of the question, he's very close.
So how aggressive do you want to be in the buyout market with that extra roster spot now?
Well, again, so this a lot feeds into what our roster looks like, and again, you know, picking guys up so that you just say you did something, or like, is there a guy that's going to make a difference? And also, even in looking in trades, you see all these names flying around. You know, you have to look at, you know, do they have money next year in their contract? What are they looking? What is the player looking for? There are some players that got traded, and you can say, like, well, why wouldn't the Magic go after those guys? Well, maybe we don't have a contract that matches up. Maybe they have money next year. Maybe they have expectations about what they're looking for. So I see a couple names, but like, we have our backcourt with Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black, you know. So is that guy going to play in front of those guys? You know, and this is again our core. So I don't know. Like, we've been spending a lot of time on that. You know, this morning even talking about potential buyout guys and whatnot. We will look to add somebody to replace Tyus shortly, and you know, after that we'll kind of see how that stuff shakes out.
You
Why do you
mentioned.
think why do you think Tyus wasn't as impactful as you guys had hoped when you signed him?
I don't know. You know, Tyus was a you know, 40% three-point shooter for, you know, the last part of his career. He's obviously like a brilliant floor general. He's got some physical limitations, but we felt that with our defensive prowess, we could absorb some of that. You know, it's sports, man. It's basketball. It didn't work. I don't know why. I really don't know why. And he's a great guy, and you know, I think he's going to land in Dallas, and we wish him the best, and I think he's going to be really good there.
We saw it with KCP last year, where he came in and, you know, the second half of the season kind of got it, but from the jump wasn't shooting the way he wanted to, the way you guys wanted to. Now Tyus similarly dropped to 29% from people. How do you think the last two free agents you've signed haven't shot the ball?
Yeah. Well, we spend a lot of time on that, Jason, and I don't have an answer for that. You know, I think that some of that is, you know, a lot of shooting, I say, comes from what kind of shots you can generate for our team through your defense, and then roster stability, lineup stability. You know, and when you have the kind of like crazy amount of lineups that we've had over the last couple of years through all these injuries, and then this year with like the drop in our defensive effectiveness. I think those things feed in and they contribute. But I wish I had a better answer than that for you, because at the end of the day, shooters got to make shots, and I don't know why. I think some of those first two factors contribute to that, Tyus is a good shooter. He's a good player. It just didn't fit here.
You mentioned how young this team still is, and how much growth there still is ahead of them. How have you seen them maybe deal with the frustration, or how have you seen them kind of react and deal with some of the frustration this season, and how do you take that into account or help them better young players in that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's actually like a really important question, because I think sometimes we've handled it well and sometimes not, and I think that's part of what goes into these trade deadlines. When you say like, how long do you wait, for this to see if the roster can be healthy? The thing about the health is, like, it gives you a baseline of understanding how things fit together. And without that, you really don't know, like, this guy's going to play in here, and then when this guy comes back, he's going to be here, or he's going to be on the bench, and you just don't know. What you're talking about is kind of an interesting question, because, how do guys respond to adversity? How do they respond to the vagaries of the NBA when it gets really hard? And I do think you learn about guys through that. I think, if anything, for us, it helps us learn some of our guys and maybe the best ways to help them cope with it. But it also gets back to the earlier question of, look, man, we want to improve this team. This team has been good when together, and it's very young. There's still, if I would have told the fans, like, last year, this is what Anthony Black is going to be this year, I don't know what they would have said. What's he going to be next year? We have to think about what these guys are going to be, a few years down the road. They're all still very, very young. So that's part of, growing with a young team. If we want, we can get old really quickly and probably be better, and listen, there are degrees of that, when we talk about, like, making a substantial trade and involving the core, we looked at some of that stuff, so, we're still evaluating that, but that's a great question.
In those evaluations, I guess Brandon asked about the buyout market earlier, just what type of players are you looking at? Is it a veteran? Is it a guard? Is it a big?
Yeah. Well, I would say hopefully for us, probably a veteran, but I would also say, those guys generally aren't going to move the needle a lot, and I don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it, right now, get our guys back healthy, get on the floor. Our roster is, I'll let other people talk about how good it is, but it's fairly well balanced. It's complete. If I say we're going to bring in, a 32-year-old guy who's, a great open three-point shooter, but how do we get him on the court? So, like, what does that do? So, I don't know. We'll kind of like go through the process of seeing, the next few days who shakes out. There could be some surprises, or talk to agents who are saying, hey, listen, my guy, they've said they'd buy him out if you guys are interested, and that sort of stuff. We might just keep our powder dry for a bit. I don't know. I wouldn't look at that minimum guy who's going to be on the buyout market at this stage as a needle mover.
Talk about the organization having Jamal's back. Do you have a lot of confidence still in his ability to get his messaging across to this young team?
Yeah, Mose is a great communicator, and look, for 4.5 years, man, we've played really hard. I think that's kind of been our brand. We're sideways right now, and that's on everybody to recapture that. That's not on one person. It's not, it's on everybody, and we got to figure that out.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate you guys.